Hello! Hello, 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 hello.
Hi.
Hello and welcome! The whole council is here. And we're all on camera. You can see all of our faces.
Try not to turn away now. I know that it's sickening.
My name is John and I am joined by, starting from the top, Sean.
Well, I'm not here. You're imagining things. You could be. You're silly. You're silly. You're silly. Why are you so silly?
Just noticed everyone else is wearing glasses and probably jump on it. Seems a low professional here.
We're joined by Jeff.
Hello.
We're joined by Ben, who's apparently finding glasses.
There we go.
Yeah, sure.
Hello, everybody. You could have got those the right way around. There we go. There. Perfect.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Fabulous.
I do like it. Yes, everything's red now.
We're all bespectacled. Ben has got his rose-coloured glasses on.
Well, I've got to make the world look better somehow.
Sure. We are here to world build. We are working on world building a brand new role-playable world, D&D-ish, system agnostic, but primarily we're going to be playing D&D in it. I think is the
that's the main concept.
the phrasing. And previously in the world building, we have looked at the bases of the races and sort of
Races of the race.
we've gone over what species are going to be playable, or what
Let's just start off with.
options there are there for that. At the very least, in terms of, can one of you guys say something real quick?
Hello.
Hi.
Excellent,
Hi.
thank you. I've just
We don't know what that was for.
sound checking purposes.
Uh-huh.
The desktop
Good thing.
audio was very quiet because none of you were talking, and I had forgotten to put the background music on. So I'm going to put the background music on now, and now I know that everybody can hear us. Hopefully, everybody can hear us.
Easiest way to test that one. If anyone happens to be in the chat right now, please let us know. Can you hear us?
If anyone is in the chat right now, please tell us the answers. No, wait, that's the wrong name.
You can feel free to give us the answers on this one if you like. There
Don't
are gonna
tell
be
them the
questions after
answers.
all. Yes, this time don't tell John the answers to these questions.
Tell us the answer.
Feel
They need to
free
figure
to
that one out
chat
for
the
themselves.
answers, because that's what we're here to do. In our second world building episode, we looked at the map, and we have set up the basic map of the primary continent of Tamrinor. Now, there's sort of two-ish follow-ups to that I have real quick. I can't remember if we've discussed this. Is Tamrinor the world, or is it that continent?
I personally feel it's better if it's that continent.
Same, actually, yeah.
Okay.
Because it also
Does then
opens up for
bring up
so
the
much
question.
expansion.
Does then bring up the question of what is the world?
That was kind of going to be the follow-up, was either what is the continent called then, or what is the world called then? Because obviously
Does it need a name particularly?
well, obviously with the Forgotten Realms, you have Faerun, which is the primary continent where the Sword Coast is, and like 95% of everything interesting on that planet happens there. And then Toril is the name of the planet, with Matt Mercer and Critical Role. You've got Taldore, Marquette, and the other one. Wildmount are the 3 continents that we have examined, and the world is called Exandria. So the world does have a name in all of these.
Yeah.
To be fair, I can count on one hand the number of times I've heard Toril come up. I didn't even know it was called Toron until fairly recently, to be honest. It's not something that comes up a lot.
It doesn't come up frequently, and it can be something that we name later.
Dave. It's called Dave.
I'm gonna veto. It's not Dave.
No. Dave's a star system.
Well,
We can't have Dave being the name of the planet. Obviously,
John,
Derek.
Rowing your weight around.
I mean, the other part of that is also in sort of D&D purposes. One of the things that they do discuss is that Jeff has resubscribed. That's frequently discussed in the D&D rulebooks. Jeff has resubscribed for 66 months in a row, going, ooh. Execute Order 66.
No.
Jeff went, not ooh.
Oh, he did go, ah.
Ah.
The A's on the stream overlay one look very ooh instead of ah.
Ooh.
Ah. Ooh, ar. One of the things they discuss in sort of the core rule books, I'm sure I've seen it in some of them, is like when you as players say things like Earth and it was a week ago, and these things that are standard things that you say because you are a human living on this planet, your characters don't say that. Your characters say the thing that is relevant to their planet, but you don't have that same frame of reference of having always lived on Toril or Exandria or Ravenloft.
Or Dave.
Or Dave. Wherever the fuck Dave is.
It's over there.
Dave, innit? It's Dave, innit?
What we are going to do tonight is a little bit different to what we've done before. Because previously we've sort of gone in and it's been much more of a discussion, and we've had a targeted thing we are looking at. And this time we said to Sean and Ben to come up with questions, and Jeff and I would answer them. And Sean said, fuck that noise, and didn't do it.
Yeah, Sean said, fuck you, I'm not 11, I'm not doing my damn homework.
I do like the fact that instead it's got, you asked the wrong person to do this little task. Because, I mean,
well,
whether we
evidently,
get through because it is opening up wonderful possibility for chatter and such forth, and whether we more like come back to these sort of question sessions every now and again.
Evidently we asked 2 of the wrong people to do it, because one of you ran away and has written a novel of questions, and one of you said, fuck that noise. So you sort of...
It's almost like...
I do much better asking things on the spot. I do not plan.
He doesn't prepare. He is now ready to, throw in questions as we come up with things.
Isn't that how this always works, though?
So I'm not sure what the best way to make these notes is gonna be. For the purposes of organizing things, I have started a Notion that I've sort of put everything into. So I've got a campaign database that has the villains that will have the items when we have some items. The locations.
That's one which we need to do at one point is either create heroes or villains of legend.
We have some of those.
Oh no! I mean, literally for the sake of basing them around the council itself.
Oh, us.
Decide whether that effectively, just for the sake we are in there somewhere. It's our staple. And pretty much sort of taking an element from Gygax and the original creators, that their elements are still in there.
I mean,
They will always be a part of it.
that is definitely something that we can look at. I mean, Eric the Cleric, when his design was drawn, Chris apparently just went, "That's John," and drew me in there as fantasy Eric the Cleric, the avian cleric of the past. What we have stated, and I'll restate this now for this stream's purposes, is that Eric, Mira, and Tak went on adventures. They are the characters who featured in the FBF logos, and they feature on things like our business cards. Still. And I have 1,000 of those downstairs, so they're not disappearing anytime soon. But their adventures were a century ago. And so they have sort of... For some of the longer-lived races, obviously that's a few years in terms of their lifespan. But for the shorter-lived races, they have fallen into antiquity. They are bygone relics of a past age. So, and obviously that lays open the chance for player characters to stake the new claim of we the heroes now, boys. So again, I don't know if I might really quickly. I've downloaded the latest version of Obsidian. I'm going to just see if it tanks the stream to try and install it.
I go for it.
Obsidian is
nothing else. This is entertaining. This is content right here.
Close that. So I said last session, last council session, that I had a notebook somewhere where Jeff and I had made the notes of what we were going to write as the Tamrinor Chronicles, which was Tak, Mira, and Eric's adventures throughout Tamrinor. And I said, I've got this, and I'm not sure where it is. And then that weekend, I went away and did some tidying.
Could never do that, John. It's terrible. Destroys all organization, I find.
You don't know what you'll find. You know what you might find.
I found the notebook.
What, the one from the film?
Yeah, weirdest thing. So I found the notebook with the stories of Tak, Eric, and Mira. So, before we start with Ben's questions, and any further delaying tactics, because we're at about 20 minutes in already, I'm going to just read the entirety of the single page of notes we made a while back, Jeff, and see how much this triggers your memory.
Prepare to be triggered, Jeff.
Mira. Mage. Kind. Compassionate. Doesn't like combat. Weak fighter. Tak. Warrior. Big, angry, low intelligence, physically very strong, tactical genius. Eric. Cleric. Healer. Vain. Well prepared. Average fighter. Gets by on luck in fights. Book 1. Group meets up. 3 quests for same item given by same person. Item is Soul Jar for Gygaxian. Person who gave quest is Gygaxian's servant. Complete quest, obtain item, get captured, weapons are taken away. Eric tricks bad guys and doesn't hand over item. First mention of Panic Moon. Book 2. Item sold. Weapons. New weapons. Panic Moon Festival coming up. in X months' time, party goes up north for something. Eric wants his hammer back. Legend of the Panic Moon. Book 3. Bad guys find / kill, but crossed out. Find the urn from Book 1. Panic Moon rises. Gygaxian begins to emerge. Team gets weapons back and manage to close portal before Gygaxian comes through. Mira has to go back to Golian for information, but is cagey about going back / how she escaped. Those are the entirety of our notes.
And then it was the next panel at the LFCC, if I remember rightly.
And then it was the next thing that we were doing that day, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah,
So that's
I do remember those.
that's what we had. Panic Moon. So Stanza says tidying the start of every Call of Cthulhu scenario.
Also, hello, Stanza. Good to see you.
Panic Moon is something we mentioned in those notes. Now, I remember the true origin of Panic Moon. It was a code name for the website when we were doing a rebranding of it. And the reason it was a code name for the website when we were doing a rebranding of it is that Panic Moon was a code name that Doctor Who used when they were bringing in Amy Pond. Because Panic Moon is a anagram of companion. What is, in terms of the world that Tamrinor is set on, what is Panic Moon? Because it sounds like it's something that happens frequently enough that there is a festival, given our planning of it. Is it an annual event?
I mean, my immediate thought is more on lines of celestial event, which is more celebrated as in an element of darker history as such. I'm effectively thinking like Halloween, but stretched further in between. But it becomes quite a huge celebration when it does come by, and it's by a second celestial body. There is one moon, and then there is the Panic Moon, which was...
Stanza suggests could be every leap year, so that would be, what, 4 years?
4 years.
Yeah. I was going to say something similar to what Ben's saying, is like in Warhammer Fantasy, there's Morrsleep, which is they have a moon with a very erratic orbit that doesn't... That, admittedly, in Warhammer, it's Warhammer, so Morrsleep is a horrible event that can cause horrible mutations and horrible demons and all that kind of garbage. But you could have it as like a similar thing of just like it's like Ben said, like a second moon that's on this particular orbit that is a means for... I mean, admittedly, being called Panic Moon makes me think something horrible, but you could have it as a celebration.
When it comes down to it, it could have a kind of twisted history to it.
Did we actually say it was a celebration or a festival?
We said it was a festival. We specifically said Panic Moon Festival coming up in X months' time. And then we mentioned Panic Moon Rises, which was also code word for we launched the website was the Panic Moon Rises. Chris and I used to have a lot of fun communications where we have code names for things.
Given that these are notes written many, many, many years ago, and we can basically do what we like with them now.
Yes.
What if it's not? What if it's not a festival? A festival to celebrate the Panic Moon? What if it's something else to ward off the Panic Moon?
What
Well,
if
that's
it's
why I kind of made that tied to like
What?
Halloween.
what if it's like the
Like-
origin of it was to ward it off, but now it's like
Yeah.
we still do it because it's fun. We know that it's not strictly warding away the bad spirit of the Panic Moon. Well, actually, no, because they possibly still would. But
Is the actual like festival itself wards off, but they have to keep doing it, and they've forgotten why they're doing it.
In which
They
case,
just-
it could become a weaker celebration, a weaker, effectively, meaning that the magic coming from it or whatever causes it to stop could effectively become weaker. You could make a campaign out of that alone. The celebration hasn't been done
there's
properly. The
Stanza,
tradition has
there's
not been kept.
all sorts of festivals like that, yes.
The thing that brings to mind specifically, and probably brought it to mind back then, is in Final Fantasy VIII. A key part of that was the moon itself would cause cause a new influx of monsters onto the planet. At a certain period when the moon was in the right place, monsters would stream from the moon to the planet.
I
Obviously not
like
trying that in this case. Yeah.
I like the idea that it is another celestial thing that is happening, like, and that it's regular enough that you can have a festival booked around it. Like
Yeah.
it's an
Mate,
orbiting celestial thing that effectively becomes a moon in the sky for a month or two every 4 years.
and
Oh, you know what I'd love for it to be like? It's like a cluster of. There's a cluster of different meteorite just floating around space in this loop, and when it comes close, for the sake of the gravitational pull, it seems to collect it together. In which case, it seems like a forming moon before it disappears off again.
but it has to be red.
Oh,
It has
yeah,
to-
absolutely.
It has to light up the sky, absolute blood red.
So
And I don't know if it's one of the ideas I had then that I'm remembering, or an idea I'm coming up with now. Wasn't the idea that the Panic Moon was the time when the Gygaxian could be summoned?
I think it was along the lines of that sort of Halloween-y thing of the veil between realities thinned and monsters that weren't normally around roamed and all that standard
All
sort of.
kinds of bad shit.
Yep. 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 Well, it's not called the Nice Happy Moon, is it?
No, that comes every 2 weeks.
4 hours, Jesus. So Panic Moon, red, a new moon in the sky for 2 months every 4 years. Festival to ward off the evil shears. Veil between realities. Weak. Monsters go crazy.
That's unfortunate when they can make some crazy money.
Another thing I've been asked to ask the council.
No, we won't marry you.
With that attitude.
Is elves.
Is
Elves. I've been asked to ask you elves.
Is that it? Just elves?
It's just that's the entire question. Is
The
elves?
the question sort of stems to what is different about elves in Tamrinor compared to Faerun, with sort of the idea being that there something that is very different between Tamrinor and Faerunian elves, or are elves more or less the same looking across both planes of existence? With the idea is like, do they maybe have, I'm throwing it out there from things like Dragon Age, where they have the tattoos that mark their history. In the Dragon Prince, the elves have sort of very small horns and one less finger. Like something that doesn't necessarily, and obviously, in all things, they have elven ears of big, sharp, pointy ears.
Big, sharp, pointy ears.
Big, sharp, pointy ears. So,
Big, bushy beard. So,
that's the dwarves.
Well, they made a
no,
stone, so it'd be
no,
very...
the dwarves are rocky elemental humanoids. Remember?
Great big mossy beards.
Okay,
Great,
yeah, we'll
big
give you that.
crystalline beard.
So do our elves in Tamrinor look? Thank you, Tanny. The tattoos on the elves in Dragon Age is called Valaslin. Is there something that?
That's what we said. That's what we said, Tanny. Sweet tats.
So
blood tattoos.
yeah, it represents the gods of the elves.
I mean, something I'd have actually thought about that before, actually, in that because our dwarves are elemental, could our elves also be? So not necessarily
that as you're going.
because I admit that I was thinking elements, but then I was thinking, well, what element would they be? Because obviously you kind of got there with avians, but then I thought, well, what if they were kind of plant-like?
I was thinking the exact same thing. The exact same thing.
You.
Get out of my head, John! Get out of my head!
They could be kind of like have almost not. I wouldn't say bark-like skin, because obviously that makes it mean they'd be quite tough, but like more kind of like regular plant, like flowers and shrubs and things like that. Like have kind of
so
plants
vaguely
and greenery
green
around.
skin.
Like
Yeah.
Okay.
They have a whole thing where they could have a whole thing where they don't they don't necessarily have. They could have a whole thing where they don't necessarily have to eat because they can photosynthesize instead.
To effectively allow themselves to grow old, they could effectively become one with nature. And
Yeah.
as well as that, those who would deny such things could effectively become versions of giants. I have just realised that I've just basically suggested that we put in the green giant.
He's probably not that jolly.
Here's some corn, motherfucker!
Because yeah, when it comes down to it, that would adapt. So what, like you say right there, Tanny, they would have a trait where they could have a lot more stealth when it comes down to greenery in the forests and such forth. Because there's a place, once again, the whole element of where effectively having your home ground.
Yeah.
And this is a nice little element of sort of throwing in that home ground can adapt and change regardless, but you can still have advantage from it.
Okay. That answers my questions.
Just thinking if there'd be anything else to go alongside that, because would they be taking, if they took a sort of humanoid kind of shape, would it be, for one, would they actually take a humanoid kind of shape? In which case, would they try to aim it around the most local people that they see? In which case, there'll be different variations of what they would look like, depending on where they came from.
Or
do they not have as much control?
I think they'd all just look like, it wouldn't be that they shift to look like whatever's around them.
What I was thinking of, because kind of what I think of when I think about it is there's a race in Guild Wars 2 called the Sylvari, which are plant people. They are, if you look them up, they are like, they're very green and they've got lots of they've got plant matter, grow, they've got, where they'd be like, their armor would almost be like, it's almost like it's grown out with petals and stuff like that. And their hair is like leaves and petals going on there.
I mean, sort of the flip side of this, sort of the drow equivalent of this type of elf is very much the Sylvaneth tree revenants that I've been painting recently, where they are sort of ghostly elves. They're not going to show up on this camera very well, but they are ghostly elves who have like tree bark armor and like have basically possessed trees to be able to attack people that have wandered into their haunted forests.
And going along with that side of things, effectively you could design them more around like the trees, or the dead trees effectively turning into more like the drow. So the reason why they're chasing after, taking on seemingly a lot more evil, is more they're aiming after life force. It's their method of staying alive. They need to take yours to continue.
Parasitic dead tree elves.
Lovely.
What I'm good for.
I'm just going to note that one down. Parasitic dead tree elves.
Like no description or explanation. Just that.
Nothing else. That's
The only explanation you require. I mean, what else do you need to know?
Sylvaneth tree revenants. Okay, Ben.
Yaha.
Hit us.
Okay.
Okay.
So, the first question actually came from Milady Law,
Okay.
and I was sort of adapted and sort of stretched it out a little bit, but it was effectively, what are the stereotypical architectural designs of each of the races? Because each one would have a particular sort of design they would go with.
Hold that thought.
Uh-huh.
We'll come back to that. That
Okay.
is an episode, and that is an episode that we need a special guest on who has interior design knowledge, and
Fair enough.
who I have been discussing this with for a while. I don't know if you can all picture,
Indeed.
In
but
which case...
that
If
both-
the answer to each of these questions is hold that thought, there's an episode. I'll laugh.
that
Every question.
that is legitimately a episode idea that we want to do. That is, let's look at what the styles of each of these places is, what the standard style is, and then what the
Regional style. Or
what the
subculture style.
fancy style is of the people that don't necessarily stick to the local style. You know, you've got the crazy rich guy who's come in and built a castle in the middle of the town, or perched the castle from Scotland on top of his skyscraper in your 90s kids cartoon.
Oh, there's nothing bad that could happen with that.
Fair, nothing bad did happen. Only good stuff happened from that.
Well, that depends on who you're asking at that point. Half the cast of Star Trek The Next Generation would argue that a lot of bad stuff happened there.
That's true.
Although a paid
Alright.
job, I guess, with Disney is, all fun.
I'm having to sneeze out.
No.
So yeah, both to Ben and to Milady Law, if you are lurking in the stream or if you're watching this VOD, we will get to that.
Okay.
Don't worry.
A little note on that one, pop a pin. In which case, I suppose the next question, which comes is close but not along the same lines, is what level of agriculture are we at? What level of farmland, of are we talking sewage systems? Are we talking anything on that? Where are we in progression? Where exactly are we setting this? Because that's going to make an adaptation on how the land is going to look eventually, for the sake that there will be areas set aside for this and set aside for that. I think it's an interesting one.
I think I'm going to start answering question now. Feel free to jump in with other thoughts if you have them, but I think for the most part it's going to be agriculture is about medieval level. Like, we have agriculture and farming, and the people of Tamrinor are pretty well equipped at doing it. They don't have like necessarily modern devices such as sprinklers, but they might have aqueducts or some limited magical / technological ways of dealing with certain agricultural issues.
See, that in itself is the main reason why I asked this, is because with a world of magic, do you just rely on the magic users to do these bits and pieces, or are we seeing the beginning of the artificers?
I think I'm going to stop and say, Jeff.
I was thinking that for farms in rural areas, that's the case. Like, you're talking about farmland. It's like arable farming and that sort of thing. But as you get into the cities, perhaps it gets more. I don't say more modern, but the beginnings of steam start to come in.
I think with what we have discussed with the previous sessions of the council, it is magic light. Like, magic isn't prevalent enough that the farmers are using it. Like, if you have magic items, you're probably an adventurer, or you might have some skill at using magic yourself, but it's not everywhere, and it's a big thing when people can use it.
So it's a high magic setting, like standard high magic.
Yeah.
Is that high magic?
I think it's pretty high magic. There's powerful magic, but it's not necessarily on the ground level where every Tom, Dick, and Harry can have it.
Yeah.
No, that sounds
Whereas, like,
to me.
whereas like settings like Eberron are wide magic settings where magic is in every facet of every person's life.
So a high
Like
magic.
even like the baker will be baking his bread with magic. It's like no.
No.
So high magic typically would be everybody has magic.
Was on the impression that was
So we're talking a low magic setting then.
low magic setting.
Low magic. Yeah, low magic typically resembles the real world past, such as Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings, where
Game of Thrones is the one I was thinking of. Yeah.
there isn't magic, but there are dragons, or there is a wizard, but it's not everybody knows magic.
It's not the focus of the thing. Yeah.
I think possibly, we're top end of the low magic, verging on medium magic, where it's not like
Upper low magic.
upper low. Like it's not so much like people know that magic exists and people know that magic can be done, but also people know we can't rely on it for everything.
I mean, that was the key part which I was trying to get to, because it's a bit like when it comes down to I've heard of the concept before of a tiefling village, where there are no doorknobs or anything like that, because each and every one of them knows thaumaturgy can unlock the door. So they don't need door handles or locks or anything like that. They literally just have a mechanism in the door which they can undo.
I just love the idea of this tiefling village where everybody walks up and the door dramatically opens. Like, you just walk up to the door and the door dramatically flies open and just slams open. I'm here.
You got to at least do that. Like steam, like it opens like steam behind it.
But equally in Tamrinor, we do have there is a level of the artificers have started to make their thing. So I think, as we've sort of said, in some of the bigger towns, especially Vectis Haven, there are sort of steam-powered deliveries, sort of. I don't know whether it's necessarily steampunky type deliveries, or if it's tech and not amazingly functional, but
it's one of I like the whole concept of being able to have an area where there are inventors. There are people who are trying to make the world easier and more accessible for other people and such. But that we're not so far back that it comes down to, well, you either can handle it or you're pretty much screwed. It's a case of, heck, even maybe being inspired by the legends of magic and trying to replicate that. As I say, effectively the beginning of the Artificer. Once again, probably wouldn't be that many of them around because the majority are going to be hunters, gatherers, and whatever's needed. But enough of them to start making things happen, which probably would mean that there are different inventions and different things which are right around the world, but you may not even get to see yet.
Well,
But
part
they're
of
being
it
done
is
somewhere.
part of it is also that they are like some of the artifices. A lot of the artificing is built upon the wonders of the past. Like there was this race of forged characters who lived in the distant past, and they had tech, and so these artificers are sort of finding bits and pieces of it and cobbling it together and like making stuff that they sort of know what it does, and like they maybe don't know that it's sort of like if the world ended today and all the people disappeared, and then a new group of people found the mobile phones and went, oh, it's a shiny bright light, not knowing that it also was able to communicate around the world and things. It's like, oh, we've got this thing and it does a thing. We know what this thing is. It does this. Oh, it does that as well?
That's kind of the plot to the Horizon games, to be honest.
Yeah,
And quite a few isekais.
that sort of thing where it's like they know that they can make things like doors that open when you approach them, and they sort of understand that technology, and there are some places that have those, especially in again some of the bigger places like Lawfell and Vectis Haven. Some of the artificers have like installed doors that open automatically when you approach the town hall, and every so often it will get stuck halfway and you'll and pull it all the rest of the way open, or you
walk into the door.
You walk into the door. That's that sort of thing. But it's like, we've got this technology. We know that it does some stuff, and we're finding out what else it can do.
The power of science. Okay, that's fair enough when it comes to that. I think that's a good response on that side of things. Because the only thing which that sort of places down, but we can come back to that one once again with the whole architectural side of things, is exactly how that would sort of make a landscape, or whether that would make any massive or particular changes. Because even when it comes down to things like sewer systems, if that pumps out into the environment of one place, does that alter the environment? We have enough creatures which are literally made from the environment itself. Could we potentially be creating other ones through the sake of what we're pumping out?
I mean, Vectis Haven is a very grim place.
Yeah, could that be a source of the conflict then?
That could very well be an interesting source of conflict. Because if you're pumping it into the wrong place, well, yeah, immediately you could be starting wars right there.
Next question.
Okay. Now, this one was more focused on sort of building on the map side of things, once again, which is more for the sake of where are the most common and used resources? Because buildings would build around those resources.
That
Whether it be for the
is
sake of getting ready for trading or anything like that. But once again, that's, I don't know if it's something we want to focus on tonight or not, but
that is another one to pin, and it literally is the same thing that we were saying in the first question, where Sean and I have been discussing, or were discussing at one point, sort of obviously the most like common resources in an area is what that area's town is built out of.
Yes.
And similarly, that influences the style of the buildings in that place, because obviously if you live in a place that's near a woods, you might have a lot of the early town is built out of wood, for instance.
Oh, of course.
And then similarly to my saying of you've got the crazy rich guy who comes in and builds a castle on the top of their Manhattan skyscraper. You know, you've got the guy that can be like, I want this stone that was found in my homeland, but sir, that's 10,000 miles away. I don't care. I have money.
Once again, very fair.
Bring that stone this far and build my house. Damn it.
I'm going to have to be right back because I have laundry to do. Joy.
Oh,
Fabulous.
I'll see you in a minute.
As soon as it will let me switch to that screen, I'm gonna pause your camera. Next question.
Okay, so next one is a bit more of a fun one of sorts.
Yay!
What are the favoured hobbies of the different races, and would that have an effect on the land? So, for example, would you end up with football pitches, if we go with our most common one, or are there hunting grounds, or do we end up splitting things up for the sake of what these people do?
Would that come down to also overlap with where these places are and what's their local
There would be an
environment?
element of that, but the real question is whether or not there would be any designated spots for the sake of what they do. For example, if the national sport was crochet, you're not going to need a field for that. You'll probably have a hall.
I would say that that's not necessarily... I don't know if that's something we want to tie to races so much as locations.
That's fair. No, so certainly a better fair point.
Because I think that that's
The only reason I
geographically...
thought about races more for the sake that we have some elemental ones, which might have particular parts.
Well, partially...
Even so.
Partially, also, like, looking at the if I go back to my screen where I've got the locations listed, if we look at it, sort of two of the big races we've got of the avians at Sunspire and the dwarves of somewhere around here, Stone's Grave,
Yeah.
immediately next to each other in an alphabetical list. Those are two out of the three that we have said are Ayo lore
Hello.
Peepo.
Good to see you.
Stone's Grave and Sunspire are two out of the three races who are elemental. Also have sort of separate primary living spaces.
Very true, though we've also now sort of tied in there the elves as well.
And I think one, the elves definitely have a primary living space that is not the human living space. It's just that we haven't named it or worked out where it is on the map yet.
Agreed.
But the elves almost certainly have, like, you know, a Mirkwood or a Rivendell equivalent that is, look at the thing my peoples can do. We also live with you because, you know, you're over there and it's nice, but the wonders of my people. And then obviously you've got some of the elves that live in Lawfell because it's nice there, or they don't like the wonders of their people, or, you know, 200 years of hearing about how great your dad's dad was. You've grown sick of living with...
And heck, it can come down to just a lot of curiosity as well.
Yeah. So I think, one, the elves definitely have... Like, we need a place on this list of where the elves live. And I'm just going to add where the elves live.
That just sounds like the title like Where the Wild Ones.
Where the wild things are. But I think that, like, we can then say from this, like, what the primary thing is in each of these locations. Emo elven community. My Chemical Romance, but with elf ears.
Yeah, I'd watch that and listen to that a lot, I think. Yeah.
Because I think,
Especially if it's done with medieval flutes and all that.
for instance, the very first thing I thought when we were saying about it's not a phase, Dad. The very first thing I thought when we were discussing hobbies is Vectis Haven, as we've said, is a grim, dark port town and centre of trade and industry. It doesn't have spare spaces for hobbies.
No. Well, I would actually make a debate that effectively they would, but it would probably be more like drinking hobbies.
Oh, it's not
more
somewhere that's got
competition.
football aside. Like, there isn't a football pitch there. There isn't an open space that they aren't.
I can imagine things like that, which
they got
really.
No, they'd be like alleyways, wouldn't they, or something like warehouses or stuff where you do it.
Sean's back.
It'd be underground fighting clubs, wouldn't it? Basically.
Oh god, yeah.
So Vectis Haven has underground fighting clubs and or drinking dens. Like, I say and or because and or they are in the same building. Like,
Yeah.
they are
or hard drugglers.
So if I put in here, we're going to add hobbies.
I was gonna say, we should really make Andor a place, but isn't that one from Star Wars?
That's from Star Wars.
So I just like the sound of that. I was like, oh, I know why.
Pint fighting. You have to down your pint as fast as possible and knock the other person out with your tankard.
I mean, I can imagine in that side of things, like all manner of different bits and pieces. Like, there's something which I saw from anime, which I love, which is effectively, okay, you are basically playing chicken, but you've got to consume at the same time. I can imagine them doing the same sort of thing. Our pack mule is going to charge us down. First one to finish the drink without leaving the table before it gets to us wins. Just going for it. Well, yes, pint fighting. Get down the pint as quick as possible, knock them out while the tankers before they beat you up. You only have to hit them once. And then you have to down another drink as well. That is a sort of thing which you just end up expecting in that kind of hard nut area. Is that very dramatic. I mean, let's face it, that is a fighter's dream location. That is where they want to go on holiday.
Yes.
They don't care about the work or what on earth is taking them there. They just want to go there. It's like, yes, it's been the best time of my life. I've been here for about 3 weeks now. I've been knocked out twice. I've knocked out 17 other people. It's been brilliant.
Alright, calm down,
Yeah.
Sunspire. Again, not football, because this is at the top of a mountain.
Well, this is where it gets a lot more intellectual. I mean, obviously...
I'm thinking that obviously part of the intellectual stuff is you go and read books, and obviously some of the race are quite happy with that. I'm thinking the other side of it is sort of acrobatics in the air.
I can certainly see that. And that's certainly something which I would definitely do, once again, for the sake of being so high up and
Or potentially
being aerial.
Like, potentially even races. Like,
yeah, true. But I'd also place in that they probably have their own kind of board game as well. So they're two very different side of things, but at the same time, it works for both of them. I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking more Parks and Recreation have created the Cones of Dunshire, which they play more like chess. It's a highly elaborate game that they understand, and it's very hard for it to be explained to anyone else. And it is one of those things where they just play it like chess. It's a strategy game with numerous different ways to win.
I like it.
It just mean at one point we need to come up with the title of that game.
So Sean, just to catch you up on the question we are currently answering, was originally what is the primary hobby of each of the races. I flipped it to say that it's not a race-based thing, it's a location-based thing, based on what
Yeah, it would be, yeah.
what is around that you can fit in fit in your hobby around. And yeah. Do we want to go through them alphabetically, or are there any that you can... Like, I think we've basically got... The two forts probably... They're not really the type of thing to have a place, like, to have a thing.
It's one of those... I can see when it comes down to the forts, they might have... Effectively, they would have their recreation area, which is probably more like the area of getting fit, and there might be games which they play amongst themselves.
Yeah.
But it's usually around training.
They like, at least from my reckoning, in a fort, it would be something small, like
Chess, cards,
something like that, or
yeah,
some sort of betting, like light betting. Which
so your cards, your dice, that kind of thing.
Yeah, something that like one of them will just have in their pack.
Yeah,
easy travel, so that they can take it wherever they go.
Yeah.
That'd be a fun one to come up with different things you could throw in there.
Yu-Gi-Oh! They play Yu-Gi-Oh!
They play Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, yeah. Magic the Gathering. Oh no, wait, they shouldn't. They shouldn't play Magic the Gathering.
No, they have a daft one.
John. There's someone trying to knock on your door.
I shouldn't answer that right now. It's probably no one good right now. Lawfell.
Uh-huh.
Lawfell, which we've said is the sort of the primary home of the noble races.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that's the one that's sort of got the space to have a big, grand arena.
I agree.
Yeah.
Like, it's the central hub
it's the sort of place
of...
which we try and show off for the sake of the title as well.
So I'm thinking that's got a big arena, and it's got regular sort of gladiator fights and magic things and
races and stuff like that.
Yeah, just
like you'd have races around the Colosseum and things.
All the things there, and like bards from distant lands come to play the whatever the fuck we call it.
And that would be quite an interesting one if they made, once again, for the sake of showing off and kind of thing, they have made an adaptive arena that can effectively, it can open up to many spectator sports or concerts and such. Also, a bard war, for example, or a bard fight between literally Battle of the Bands sort of style.
Very like Scott Pilgrim Battle of the Bands, like
exactly. Or going to the complete opposite side, where, as you say, races around an arena which carries on changing as you make your way about it. That there will be some parts which end up shooting up and falling down, and can be quite the dramatic side of things that no one really knows how it works.
Somebody knows at least half of how it works.
Oh yeah.
Somebody knows at least half of how it works, and there's another half that is like, did we program that?
That is a tempting one for the sake of another campaign of sorts in this as well, which is the secrets of the Grand Arena.
A grand adaptive arena that can reform its playing field.
Artifice has been busy then, haven't they?
Based on the display being put on from Battle of the Bards to races that constantly shift the environment of the races to gladiator battles. Icon types. So I think there's really 3 locations on this list left that need places, that need hobby things listed on them. Which is
I have. Oh, yeah.
Sanctuary Springs, Staros, and Stone's Grave.
I have a suggestion for the sake of Stone's Grave,
Okay.
which is going along with the whole element which we got a little bit into, but I don't think we ever really adapted it out fully, which is on Dwarven reproduction is effectively they create new, effectively Dwarven golems. They make new versions of themselves, and that's how they reproduce. Playing along with that side of things, they could effectively have that as their hobby as well. Not necessarily the reproduction
Crafting
side of things, but effectively they are crafters. Once again, they come across the stones which other people like. They don't really hold too much strength to it themselves, but these crafting could end up being other elaborate things. Like, for instance, creating rock creatures to fight each other. I think you could have their version of Pokemon. Oh, but literally, I've made this, let's put it against your little thing as well. Where it could then turn into numerous different little bits as well. Because it opens up to, have there been rock creatures which have just escaped these confines? And there's an ethical side of things as well as to, is this right or not? Have they really got life, and where exactly, on how exactly does that sort of play around? But I like that whole thing of effectively taking a part which is essentially theirs and no one else's, and what would they do with it?
another who here has watched The Rings of Power?
No.
No.
Nope.
Cool. Can
That
I
helped a lot.
Can I, for the sake of this, if you haven't watched Rings of Power and don't want spoilers, tune out now for about 5 minutes.
Looks like
If you will alert you when we're done. I'll wave my hands. Do you guys mind a brief non-plot related spoiler?
I don't mind.
Towards the start of the Rings of Power, Elrond needs to go to visit a dwarven friend of his whom he has not seen for 20 years. He doesn't think much of this because he's an elf, and the dwarf takes some more egregence to the fact he's not seen his best friend for 20 years. And challenges Elrond to a dwarven contest of stamina, wherein they will both break rocks until the other one can't.
Like it?
So is that potentially also a thing that our dwarves...
I would say so.
It sounds about right for him.
That's fair, Lady Law. I don't know how you will notice when you get back that... Yes. Again, you can't hear me.
Oh. Well, it's safe now, isn't it?
Yes.
So yeah, all fun stuff.
Look at the farms.
Tests of endurance and mining stamina are common, especially to show off to the other races. So, Staros or Sanctuary Springs?
Well, Staros is an interesting one for the sake of it being pirate boats that he tied and lashed together and forming their own area, which opens up for sea-like hobbies for the one of
I
showing
feel
off
that's
sailing skills.
That's probably that's almost certainly something that they do there, of sea shanties the games that you would play on the deck of a ship, like the dice and the cards, similar to Fort Casimir and Vigil.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I would say with Staros being very piratical, it would be heavy gambling.
Yes.
Oh god, yeah.
Unlike
Like
Casimir and Vigil.
betting your entire house, your family, your goat, and everything else on dice and cards and various other gambling things that we make out in nature.
Actually,
I can see them basically doing pretty much anything they can gamble on that they can do while they're there.
actually,
They're all sober.
the other side of that is like climbing the rigging and doing all that sort of thing, but picture that but a race.
Pardon me.
Because you can you can climb the rigging of multiple ships and race from one place to another in this town. So it's like,
oh my god, they could have a Jack Sparrow off.
So Staros hobbies.
Good night. Thank goodness for that, because otherwise this probably wouldn't work.
Heavy gambling. Dice, cards, anything that can be bet on. Sea shanty sing-offs. Rigging races from between several ships. What do they do in the desert?
Well, what don't they do in the desert? I tell you. Once again, I can imagine that being a lot more of a calmer situation. And once again, thinking along the lines almost like easy travel games of either cards or something like that. Because if you are living in the desert, unless you have something in there a bit like in Avatar, where people can adapt and make crafts which can serve better out there, and potentially there are animals which will have in this which can probably race out there, in which case I reckon that those races would be very different. They'd be more like endurance races against the heat, against the sands, rather than a race as fast as you can from point A to point B.
No, they wouldn't do stuff like that.
Because this, I reckon it'd be more like an endurance side of things, of how long can you last out there, or do certain bits and pieces as such. Either that, it would be anything which you can effectively do whilst you're waiting in the shade for the cooler part of the day to come by.
Well, we know that, like, Sanctuary Springs is a settlement. It might...
Which I feel they wouldn't... If it being a settlement, that means kind of relatively smaller than many of the other places we mentioned.
Yeah.
So I feel they wouldn't do anything that would be risky. Especially in the
valid point.
Because they couldn't afford to lose people, even
no,
in
they don't have the luxury to do that.
So I feel there'd be things that would be much more subdued.
Well,
like once again, like cards, like board games, almost. Because I think is it Mancala was originally in like Egypt or Africa, I believe, and a bead-based game. Which is like foldable and portable and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't.
It wouldn't be anything which would waste the water, because let's face it, the water's there as your respite. You don't want to do anything to risk it. You wouldn't want to do anything to taint it or anything like that. So it would be a case of ensuring it's something that doesn't require you to do anything of excess, like you say, any excess energy outside of this. It's just going to put everything at risk.
Yeah.
So, yeah, your board games, or effectively, I could see this as the place of almost like the novelists, the storytellers, as it were.
Yeah, that would be. Well, I mean, like people just sat around telling tales,
Yeah.
and or even then, possibly even what is it? There's like a whole thing of I can't remember if it was a I can't remember where I can't remember. But there's like a whole thing of telling us like telling tall tales, and then the next person tells an even taller tale, and the next and it's the idea is it's almost a competition to tell the most outrageous story.
What, the four
Like,
Yorkshiremen?
it could be
Four
based on
Yorkshiremen.
truth, but you just overly flamboyantly made things bigger than they were, or just a story you make up.
Maybe they
But
make maybe it's a competition they made out of the four Yorkshiremen. They made a competition out of it.
Yeah.
150 of us living in shoebox in the middle of the road. Get up at 5:30 in the morning, half an hour before we went to bed, and
That would
lick
be
the
an
road clean
interesting
with
one.
tongue.
Competitive storytelling, but it's literally become a sport of their own.
Yeah.
What's
I'm like,
It's the sort of thing which would make no sense anywhere else, but right there where you can't get away too easily. And as well as that, could you imagine sending any bards there? You know, if you're gonna
yeah.
try and do anything
It
to win
may
us
well be
over,
that
you're gonna have
it,
to
it,
try.
it may well be that like it's almost a pilgrimage site for bards that they go
That is
there
very true.
to kind of
Yes.
train almost to become better storytellers and better singers and better
And that's the other
for
thing. Is,
flighting?
can you imagine?
fighting.
That was the thing. It's not necessarily the
That's the rap
thing
battles,
you were
yeah.
talking about, but it's basically like the Viking rap battle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much. Yeah.
It literally.
Yeah, I feel like obviously the telling story, the competitive storytelling thing we mentioned, but also fighting would work as well. Like a lot of wordplay rather than
Yeah.
bouncing around and doing backflips and shit.
It's the sort of place where I imagine music being everywhere, but once again, even this place where it's adapted into telling your story, it's adapted into just making the time or making an ambiance of sorts. It's so much more important there than it is anywhere else, just for the sake of the desolate nature of everything else around you.
Yeah.
Sorry, the Wikipedia entry of flighting. Flighting is a contest consisting of the exchange of insults between two parties, often conducted in verse.
Oh my god, it's a vicious mockery battle.
As we've said, it's a rap battle, like
You could you could say that it's an epic rap battle
of
of history.
history.
I'm sorry, I said that wrong. I mean, in
I agree with you there, my lady law. I do agree with you there. I'd have to learn to get my rap down. And probably not sounding like Terry Wogan would help. Why on earth did I start doing that voice? Oh god, I could imagine just trying to get into a Viking rap. I don't know whether that would work out well for any of us.
Apparently, it features in Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
it does.
Uh-huh.
Very fun.
You can engage in flighting with various non-player characters for prestige and other things.
We've had a request, John.
I believe it
Had a
increased.
request.
I
Can we
believe
do
it
a
increased-
FBF flighting stream?
I personally can't flight, but I'm more than happy to MC a flighting stream if others wish to flight at each other.
Oh dear God! Oh, this would be one of the funniest things. And that's how we got famous. Lovely.
Anyway, I think that pretty much, unless there's anything anybody else wishes to add to the hobbies of anywhere that we've covered, I think that pretty much covers the hobbies of everywhere. I think possibly for the sake of I think Sean missed the first two we mentioned, so I'll just go back over them quickly, which was Vectis Haven being sort of the grim and dismal gothic town that it is, which also possibly covers some of the answers to question 1 that we didn't answer. It doesn't have the space for a lot of like big outdoorsy things, so it's underground fighting pits and or drinking dens.
Yeah, I would say if it's gothic and kind of almost Victorian-esque in its industrial nature, it would be mostly just drinking.
Yeah.
Mostly.
And then Sunspire being at the top of the mountains, again, doesn't have a lot of space for things like, there isn't football pitches up there because it's the difficult to get to tops of the mountains that the birds live at because they can fly there. And so it's primarily focused around things like aerial acrobatics and races, as well as a highly elaborate game similar to chess, which is hard to explain to anyone else, but is some sort of weird strategy game that the avians enjoy.
Yes.
Cool.
So, next question.
Okay, so the next question which I have is, are there differing ruling structures? So as in the kings down to the knights, down to the stewards, etc., etc., etc. Not necessarily hammering out what they are, but do they exist and are they different in the different locations?
Yes. Next question.
That was easy.
Going along with that, are the gods involved with them?
Are the gods involved with the
ruling structures? Or are they effectively separate from the ruling structures? The mortals do as the mortals do, and the gods happen to be on the side so long as they get their tribute.
Have we talked about Pantheon yet? That's the thing.
We haven't talked about Pantheon yet. I think that song, we're coming up as another stream at one point.
We haven't discussed the Pantheon yet, but I feel my answer to that question is the gods aren't involved, but that doesn't stop some of the people saying they are.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Just like real life. Da, da, da.
I think by and large the gods aren't very involved in Tamrinor. I think much like in Toril and Exandria, people know the gods exist. But it's not like much like our take with dragons. You don't see them wandering around. They aren't down here dealing with things. If they are down here dealing with things, it's because holy shit, something really bad is happening that they need to manifest themselves and deal with.
Or at least manifest themselves in a manner which people would recognize them.
Yeah.
Because there is no saying that they wouldn't just come down and watch, effectively.
But I don't think... Again, this could change, and we might find out that one of the gods does love it. But I think for the most part, they don't come to the world. And there's a reason they don't come, and it's because it makes things worse when they do.
Remember, part of the backstory of the original world we had was that the Lortak, the warlord, had built up this huge army and was set to basically go against the abode of the divine race,
Antak,
the Antari.
The Antari.
Yep. And they were met by one person, and that's like the legend just like stops there.
And then flash of light, the legend ends. Nobody knows what happened.
Nobody knows what happened, but the only thing that whatever happened, nothing there's like nothing left, whatever happened, but nobody knows what happened. And so that's why the gods don't come down, because it's last time it happened, we don't know what happened.
So I think that also probably answers the question. Is at some point the gods did have more active role in the world, in Tamrinor events, and then they went, oh, if we're here, people see us and they can do things against us. Let's go and watch from afar. My people need me.
Always a fun side.
It's just far and change the channel.
I am gonna switch back to Obsidian for that note and just put in the gods used to have a more active role in Tamrinor, but then Lortak happened, and no one knows the end of that story, and the gods, not the dogs, the gods are now gone.
And the dogs are best boys and girls.
Yes.
So saith the Lord.
This doesn't stop some of the ruling classes claiming that the gods have an active hand in their decision making or proclamations. The end.
Yeah.
There. Also, well loaded. Perfect. The gods aren't down here meddling like some people. Claire's had Zeus. Hailing his child support summons.
But yeah, I think like very much like, you know, eventually, if the gods are down here and doing stuff, they get noticed and things happen around them. And I know that, like, stealing from other role-playing game systems a little bit, but I like the role-playing game of Scion, which has fate binding, which is the reason why the gods aren't down here dealing with things, is that if they come down here and deal with things, they get binded into a specific way that fate sees them, and if they do that, they get, like, Loki gets bound into the role of villain because everybody expects him to be the villain. And he doesn't like it, but he has to play that role because that's the role that fate has decided for him. But if he's up there and sort of pokes somebody to do a thing for him, he can go against what fate has necessarily deigned. Next question.
Okay. This one might be another one we have to put a pin in anyway. But I think it comes down with an interesting side of things on exactly blending history and how things have sort of come to where we are now.
Okay.
So one maybe to think about more than to actually get an immediate answer now. Which is, who were the most prevalent rulers? And what did they bring to history? And what has happened thanks to their influence?
Yes.
Because once again, I mean, it's that whole element that the world is literally crafted and changed by influence of the mortals running around. And that will be down to their heroes, their rulers, their all manner of different bits and pieces. But what exactly have they done? Or are there any you can think of now that might have a bit more of a standing point? And one of the better ones would probably be along the lines of, how did the union of races happen?
I think one off the top of my head that that possibly we can discuss. I don't have names. I have a name, but
I don't know whether that's as necessary now as later, but just a basic idea of what happened.
I think there was
the building structure.
I think that about a century and a half ago, when the thing that we mention of Lortak amassing an army of the Wild Ones and marching on the Antari, assuming Jeff, and I'm going to turn to Jeff, we are keeping that as a thing that happened.
I think that makes sense, because that then builds up the history of the world, the lore of the world.
So I think that some of the important rulers of that time, the humans and the elves and the avians at the very least, the leaders didn't view the Wild Ones as a force they needed to stop. And so Lortak was able to build up a giant army that disappeared. That potentially, if the races of men and elves and bird people had sort of seen fit to step into, the Antari might still be on the planet. But they didn't think that anything was going to come of this. And it became much more of a thing because they didn't stop it. And Lortak was able to pull more power than they saw that he would be able to. And potentially, on the flip side of that, post that happening, that's when sort of the true union of the main races occurs. In that they suddenly go, oh, we need to do a thing about this now, and that's why it's, that's why the seat of power is Lorfell. It's like that's where the civilizations came together, and sort of possibly even like it's built on a effectively almost like this crater, like the place that the Antari, the singular Antari, went, stop this nonsense, or whatever happened, because again, we don't know the end to that story. And it's a story that
went to the pub, talked it all out.
I like to think of it like, what you're saying, like, the races did nothing to stop Lortak. There's the scene from Yes Prime Minister, Yes Minister, is when there's like a crisis growing in another part of the world, and Sir Humphrey says there's a 4-part response to this. In the first part, we say nothing is going to happen and we should do nothing. In the second part, we say something may be about to happen, but there's nothing we can do. In the third, in the third part, well, maybe there is something we can do, but we shouldn't do it. In the fourth part, maybe there was something we could have done, but it's too late now.
Yeah. Or similarly, in Douglas Adams, the greatest cloaking device of any spaceship is the somebody else's problem field. It doesn't make the ship invisible, it just makes it somebody else's problem to deal with.
Yep.
I must admit, I was then thinking whether it had been along the lines of a union against the greater evil, and not realizing the union was necessary in the first place. And
I mean, I think
some maybe even argue that it probably wasn't, but
I think possibly there is a that particular union for words. I think there's
well said.
Thank you. I studied words. I think if we go back to this view of it, Fort Vigil and Fort Casimir. Fort Vigil is possibly the older of the two forts, but both of those are not new things. They are possibly 2-3 centuries old. We don't necessarily know the origins of them. Well, we don't know the origins of them yet. It's possibly not common knowledge what the origins of them were, but people know what they are. In that sort of, it's a thing that's always been there. We don't know we don't know the story of why it started unless you are someone who is there. But that's possibly the first sort of union of the. I'm going to keep going with the way I've been titling it. That was the first union of the noble races. And then I think, to on the question of this one, there was something that either they didn't think it was something to deal with, or something else was happening that meant they didn't deal with this thing that was happening over there. A century and a half previously, that was the rise of Lortak and the fall of the Antari, or the disappearance of the Antari. So I think possibly there was a thing 300 odd years ago that brought about Fort Casimir and Fort Vigil, or first one then the other, and sort of kept this watch on them.
You think it's something that needs to be answered?
I don't think it's something that needs to be answered personally in a way that.
I don't think it needs to be fully answered, but there should be some semblance of that history which would prevail forth.
I don't think it's something that necessarily needs to be answered in a way that everybody in the world knows it.
Exactly.
I think it needs to be answered in a way that we, if not we, at least I have some idea about it and can go, aha, here is plot points that you know about. I think that my at this point, my feeling is that thing I just said. Does anybody have anything they want to tack onto that or alter about that? Would you like me to repeat it as I write it out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably a good idea.
Okay.
Plus gives you a chance to write it out without having to worry too much.
I'm gonna. So, 300 years. We need to come up with a calendar schedule at some point.
300 periods of time.
300 years ago, something happened that caused the building of Fort Vigil and Fort Casimir, and started an eternal watch on both locations. This is the first grand union of the nobile races of Tamrinor. 150 years ago, either the leaders of the noble races were distracted by something, or didn't see Lortak as a threat, causing the cataclysm, the very bad fall of the Antari, disappearance of the Antari and the construction of Lawfell, the first seat of the noble races of Tamrinor. Thoughts, feelings, emotions.
I like the idea that it's something that's left unexplained. The actual events, what happened, is left unexplained. I like the idea that there's that mystery.
Well, the other side of things, the element of not giving information there also throws in, is there a reason why? Is it a forbidden law? Is it something which has literally been erased from any written or marked down history for a reason? It, effectively, to try and save the idiocy that happened in the past happening again, we literally get rid of it.
I think in terms of okay, one question: are Fort Vigil and Fort Casimir the same age, or is there because are they about 300 years each, or was it like Personally, I think Casimir is older than Vigil.
Do we have the map?
I can't remember.
I would have placed that the other way round, actually.
Could we see a map, please?
Yes.
Yeah. Because in my mind, when it comes down to it, for the sake of the Temple of Gygaxian, and that's what they're trying to keep, I see Gygaxian's temple being there a hell of a lot longer than all the others.
Oh, the Temple of the Gygaxian has,
And for that reason, the Fort Vigil, for the sake of trying to keep tabs
That would
on
make sense.
that
That would make
been around
sense.
for so long.
Older.
Whereas the Fort Casimir, this is more something which has been happening slowly over the later, the more recent 100 years or several hundred years instead, and so that one's fresher in that sense.
Okay.
I've had plenty of time to have adjusted in, but I think that the Fort Vigil should certainly be the older one.
Yeah.
Here is the map now on the stream. I hope you guys can see the stream.
Let me just.
No.
Do you need me to switch it on the Discord?
No. It's alright.
I don't know how. I'm on the.
Let's just open up another page.
Okay.
And I'll be there.
There we go.
I'll switch the Discord 1 second.
No, you've just done this to get your views up, haven't you?
There you go.
Yeah, I agree. I fully agree with Ben. Fort Vigil is there
100%.
for
So
Temple of Gygax, definitely.
is Vigil 1,000 years old, 500 years old? Like, if we're saying,
How old is the temple?
older. I think whatever we say for the fort, the temple was there first.
Oh, absolutely that. Absolutely that.
But again, I don't. It makes for me. I don't want to pin an age on it. I want to say that for as long as people can remember, the fort has been there overlooking the temple. However long that is.
It's an idea as well when it comes down to that. All they know is that the temple was there first, and Vigil came after it.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to put 1,000 years. 1,000 years, Fort Vigil.
I like the idea of not having an age on it.
I know that you don't want an age on it, but also for reasons of story writing, gameplay things.
It's once again, it's an element of what is known history and what is history.
This isn't known, but
it's marked down for our use rather than for the sake of known history.
This isn't a thing that people in the world know. Oh, it's 1,000 years old, that. Because no race lives long enough that they can go, I was there when it was made.
Well, same question then has to be, how old is the temple?
That's a
I
fair
was there
point.
when the temple was built. I'm old Bill, by the way.
While the temple is older than the fort, the temple came first. I don't think the age gap should be that big. I think they should, comparatively, the temple should,
I
the
am
fort
prone
should
to
be quite
actually-
recent.
Yeah, I'm prone to agreeing with.
So you think the temple was
Jeff.
100 years old when the fort was built there? 50 years old?
What, 100 years old?
100.
I'd say hundreds.
But,
Hundreds
yeah.
a decent number. A century is.
Was the temple immediate threat, or was it kind of just a place where people worshipped and then became a threat?
I think it's become a progressive threat.
This is probably
Because
obviously, if it became a threat pretty damn quick, then 50 years. If it became a threat over quite a long period of time, then 100.
This is like, probably going into another stream about history, but
Yeah.
my idea is that the temple, it's not so much the temple itself that's a threat, it's what it was built on top of.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's like, when did it become perceived as threat? Because I'm assuming people just said, it's just a temple, nothing to worry about, la-di-da-di-da.
I imagine when it comes down to it,
actually,
the way I see the history of the Fort Vigil is effectively it started out as more like an encampment, which was nowhere near fort-wise, but it was more people trying to keep an eye on things. And as it slowly progressed, they built up and around it when they realized, oh no, we need to pay a lot more attention to this.
Yeah, I think very much it was... The temple wasn't immediately a threat, probably because, like, while it was built on ancient things and stuff, like, I don't think that the spirit of the Gygaxian was sealed away in it from the very start. I think that happened afterwards.
Yeah.
How about the temple was built to seal away the Gygaxian, and the Fort Vigil was built to watch over the temple?
I like if it was like the temple was.
It would then beg the question: why didn't you just build a citadel or a keep or a bastion on top of the Gygaxian?
Yeah, I think
that's a question. That is a question. Yeah.
The temple was. Did the temple start as we are worshipping the Gygaxian, and then they did a thing to seal him and his followers away?
I'm seeing it more like that, to be fair, that effectively the Temple of Gygaxian was being built. There were some people who were very curious about it. As it grew and it got bigger and bigger and became a point of realizing, oh no, this is something we need to worry about. The Fort Vigil was formed and created proper.
But then,
they managed to do some... Oh, yeah?
Why not destroy the temple?
Unless they had to do something in the temple which locked it away. Like, for instance, let's say that, for instance, it became more like a Planier portal of sorts to gain power to Gygaxian or something along those lines. But something in that also, if it's twisted in a different manner, can restrain instead of support. So, in which case you need to keep it there because it keeps the lock locked. To break the lock gives an opportunity for it to be opened again.
Yeah, what I'm getting an idea of with that is there's an SCP called SCP-231, I want to say.
Yeah, for a second, we were going to suggest that we literally introduce the SCPs into this world.
It's not that. It's the fact that there's a particular SCP where it's a bunch of women who are all pregnant, and they have to not give birth at all costs. And in order to do that, they have to perform a certain procedure or a certain ritual, and they have to keep doing this ritual over and over again, as often as possible, to stop these whatever they're pregnant with being born. And I feel it's probably the similar thing of that's why the temple's still there, is there are people still there, and they have to keep performing this ritual to stop.
I see.
Does that tie back into what we started with about the Panic Moon Festival?
Potentially.
It does have the potential link in, yeah.
But it's like they have to keep doing this to keep it weak, and then during the festival, do a whole lot of other things to make sure it really just doesn't happen.
Which would make sense as this convergence as the panic moon comes in, makes it stronger, whatever on earth it is, and so more effort needs to be done to try and hold it at bay.
Yeah. Like, so in the temple, there is constant threat, but it gets worse as the panic moon starts
Rises.
to grow.
Yeah.
And they need the rest of the festivals from around the world to provide the extra energy, I want to say, to provide that seal.
Exactly.
Vibes. The vibes. And so the fourth is just there to keep an eye on that. And if it looks like bad shit's going on in that temple, they gotta send people out to get some fucking help.
Yeah. So, 1,000 years ago, Fort Vigil was built to watch the Temple of the Gygaxian, which had been constructed 100 years previously, following a ritual to lock away the spirit of the Gygaxian and his followers inside. The temple can't be destroyed lest the lock holding the Gygaxian away be broken. The fort started as an encampment before being grown into a full fort that has stood the tests of time.
That sounds good.
Most, if not all, of these details are lost to antiquity amongst the common folk of Tamrinor. They know the importance of Fort Vigil, but some view it as a punishment to be sent there, because they would. Like, it's in the middle of the desert. It's a very nasty place.
Oh yeah.
Like,
it's the wall basically, isn't it?
yeah.
It's pretty much the wall.
Nobody's going, woohoo! Fort Vigil!
Well, it's one of those things. If
Vigil.
there are some who get convinced in, because once again, talking military tactics of some sort, they will be trying to convince people in there with all manner of to just pull you in and get you. Oh yes, the ale never stops flowing when you come to Fort Vigil. I swear
It's an easy job. You just got to stand and watch. Nothing else. Nothing ever happens.
Exactly.
So, I guess another. I've lost where my layers are here. If we're saying so, Fort Vigil has been there for 1,000 years. Fort Casimir. Do we want to stick with 300 as the vague timeline I've put on that? Fort Casimir has been there for 300 years. Does that mean that this corrupted Badland has...
Effectively, what I think we're saying is that corrupted Badland over some period in that last 300 years has started to slowly start creeping towards.
Yeah, it started 300 years ago.
Exactly. And they decided, okay, we need to have another front along there to try and assist. So Fort Vigil now getting a second job, effectively. But for the sake of Casimir, when it comes down to it, it was made for this encroaching darkness coming. The part which none of them ever expected to see was that it would start focusing on heading towards the Gygaxian.
Yeah. So is that event when they first saw... Again, this is not necessarily common knowledge, but is this event that occurred 300 years ago that saw the foundation of Fort Casimir, is that what saw the forming of the Maelstrom?
So sorry, I was distracted. What?
So, 300 years previously, 300 years into the past, the noble races of Tamrinor constructed Fort Casimir, and this dark, corrupted land has, in those 300 years, grown up from from the coastline this far in. Was the event that occurred 300 years ago the first sighting of the maelstrom that exists off this coast?
That's not a bad way to place it, to be fair. Effectively, the fort being more starting off as you keeping an eye with a fair distance back.
I mean,
and it's slowly adapting into, or even it potentially having started off closer to the coastline. And as this affected, this darkness started to prevail upon the land from the maelstrom, they've had to push back, and they pull back to a certain distance to establish something more solid to try and hold it bay.
We've stated, I believe, I'd have to go and watch the VOD of last time to be certain of this, but I believe we stated last time that this journey from Vigil to the temple is about a day's travel.
Yes, I remember
that. Going by that, like, Fort Casimir is about 3 days from the closest coast, and another... It's about a week, 7 days worth of travel from the furthest coastline out. So yeah, I think possibly Fort Casimir started a bit closer to the coast and then has retreated back and is now once again on the front line.
Because it could have started off effectively more like, once again, an encampment of sorts, which has been slowly progressing backwards, and they decided they need to put the fort in for the sake of, we need to get on top of this a bit more. It could have been a bit more ignored over time, which is the reason why it's come so close to Casimir, which is, once again, down to higher rulers just not really thinking there's so much of a thing to worry about. Because otherwise there would be a point where they would start to build another one in the middle or something to try and hold it back in different areas as it's along that coast. Effectively, over the amounts of years, because nothing's happened from this encroaching darkness, they don't think it's as much of a problem, regardless of what is being said from the fort, which is pretty much upon the darkness now.
Yes.
So, 300 years ago, the maelstrom to the east occurred, which caused the building of Fort Casimir initially on the coast and then retreating further inland as the Badlands encroached before a permanent location was established. It hasn't been moved for some years and is now once again on the very front lines of the Badlands. 150 years ago, either the leaders of the noble races were distracted by something, possibly the Fort Casimir situation, or didn't see Lortak as a threat, causing the very bad disappearance of the Antari and the construction of Lorfell, the first seat of the noble races of Tamrinor. I think that succinctly. I think that very long-windedly answers the question that was asked.
Pretty much.
One.
Well, we're speaking binary now, are we?
110 001 010 1110. I've referred to it repeatedly here and throughout as the noble races of Tamrinor. Does this group of races have a faction name?
Ooh.
Much like in the Swords Coast, you have the Lord's Alliance.
I'm so tempted to throw in a sort of punny thing with the lore above, where it's almost like the lords above and stuff like that. But with once again going the whole with Lawfell with being the main location, lore feels like it should have the key link in there. Do you agree, or do you think I'm just sort of spitting stupid things going?
If they had nothing to do with Law, whatever his name was,
I think
they wouldn't take his name.
Yeah, I don't think Law is the name they would pick for themselves, because Lawtak was not a good person.
Law, Law fell is like, this is where Law.
Yeah, it's where Law fell. Yeah, it's
that makes sense.
It's
but
more for the sake
naming themselves after him is like, that's a bit no.
No, you're quite right. When it comes down to trying to figure that side of things, because I was trying to think, is there a way to sort of effectively saying above law, above placing themselves, but nothing really sort of does that trick. In which case, it would be a case that I think there'd be some form on their union. If this was a location point of their union, it makes more sense that they would be trying to make a focal point on that connection. The real question is, what would they focus on as the best way of their different connection? As well as that, try not to come up with something that just sounds, well, mischievous or terrible, like the binding of them or something like that, which doesn't sound right when it comes. The binding is coming for you.
The Casimir Union.
The Casimir Union, yeah.
Yeah, it works.
Or the Casimir Alliance. The Alliance of Casimir.
I think Alliance works better because I once again, do butt in and tell me I'm completely wrong here, but when it comes down to, I think Alliance works better, which is more, we need each other, we understand we need each other, we might not agree with each other. Union pretty much says we've made an agreement.
Yeah.
So
Alliance works better.
Union gives off the idea that everyone is in 100% agreement on everything, where Alliance is like, there's some leeway, there's some people there's some groups that might not be 100. Like, there'll be some talking involved, a lot of talking involved, but
they're pointed roughly in the right direction.
we're
happy with what you're facing. We're happy with what you're facing.
We're all mostly in the right direction. It's just like some people may veer a little bit, but then they'll come back and just
exactly. I'm not entirely sure whether they should be called cheesy bastards. You're going in the right direction, but it's just not entirely sure.
I'm afraid it's not for agreement.
The Alliance of Casimir.
That has a nice ring to it. That has a very nice ring to it.
I also did just look up the origin of the word Casimir, and it means proclaimer of peace.
I was about to say, who is Casimir? Who is Casimir then?
That is a fine question that I think is, again, the answer to the leader of the time. Possibly.
Another question when it comes down to, it's more of a suggestion and potential for any of our numerous artists. What is the symbol of the Alliance of Casimir?
I think possibly the the king 300 years ago, the king of men, the charismatic king of men, was King Casimir the X-numbered.
I do like it also being almost like the suggestion that they were the one to say, look, this alliance of ours has worked for what we've just done. Should we not carry this forth? We might not see eye to eye, but we can do all this. Literally, that once again, that element of charisma. But I would love to place it down almost as if, for the sake of the high level of a sandwich they have, that through the history, that it maybe even been twisted around that almost no one's exactly sure which race Casimir was. Lots of them lay claim to it because they were the one who actually caused everything, and maybe there's a point to that it's better that they almost knew back in the day that it's better not to actually have that. That people believe whoever they want to believe, and because the power of belief could hold this alliance better than anything else. That might be just be me thinking too much into these things. But
I like the idea that he's just like this figure of legend. Nobody knows it. Nobody these days knows exactly who he is, because then he could be anybody.
And this is the thing, I could even see the Casimir being effectively almost take like a knight sort of character where no one has ever even seen the face. It was by lore alone. It was like constantly covered. Think almost like it's our version of a Mandalorian, effectively.
I think
you couldn't tell what's underneath it.
Like all representations of him are always like heavily vague.
Exactly.
Like he could be avian, he could be elf, he could be human, he could be anything.
Exactly, and the best part of that, everyone places a claim to him through a characteristic of the history, which may or may not be real, but they believe ties it into their particular race, if that way inclined.
I would.
It's basically they do it for the sake of the story.
I would bring forth a point then.
Mm-hmm.
This event should happen further into the past.
Probably a good idea, actually.
I think this event should be moved to 600 years ago.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Because 300 years is short enough that elves and, like, assuming we are keeping the same age ranges on them, an elf could be 600, but that's a long time. A gnome, a dwarf, they will have died off and had several generations in 600 years.
We haven't actually fully placed down whether or not we're keeping with that kind of age scale anyway, but for the sake of the ease, 600 is a good distance regardless.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter if we do change our mind in the future, it doesn't.
But that does, like, that does then also allow for this, like, in the day, this Casimir was possibly very well known, and you know, if you were around 600 years ago, you would have seen his face, you would have known who he was. Possibly as he was rising through the ranks, like Prince Casimir was very well known, and then he became King Casimir, and he realised he needed to do this alliance, and he started wearing the helmet. But, you know, there might have been people who knew him before that point, but knew him before he went, I need to become a symbol, and started wearing a Batman outfit.
Yeah. I'm so glad you got the idea which I was going with about trying to directly reference it.
But basically, if it's 600 years ago, nobody who was young when he was young is still around.
No.
And if they are smart enough to know that what he did for a reason in concealing who he was. Which is sort of this problem that you have with long-lived races of, like, I was there when the ring happened, Gandalf.
I've been with that in the film, the books. I was there when the ring happened, Gandalf.
You don't
You've had
remember
too
that
many
scene?
again, haven't you?
It's
I don't
been a
know what it
while.
was. He sounded more. I don't know what. I don't know what it was. He sounded more confident.
Um,
Oh, I just love that idea now. Just Elrond, you are no actor, Gandalf. I was there. I told him, you've got to throw that ring in. I said to him. Would he listen? No.
we
No normal weapon can break it. I'll throw it in a big hole.
I don't want to see this iteration with drunk Elrond.
I'm not even saying. I'm not even saying he was drunk. I'm just saying him as like massively not confident in what he's saying.
I was there. I was there, Gandalf.
I was there, Gandalf, when that guy took the ring.
Um, we now have
When
two.
when the race of men show they're a bunch of dicks.
We now have two factions as well, because we have the Alliance of Casimir.
Yeah.
Sounds like Morty, says Law.
Oh, jeez, Rick.
Oh, jeez, Rick, I was there when it happened.
Oh, jeez, Gandalf.
But we have the Alliance of Casimir, and we also have the Ember Wolf Archive.
Yes.
So that's two factions that we have now. I don't really have any other point to add to that, just that there are two of them.
We got two.
Do we feel like one more? Do you have one quick question, Ben?
Okay.
Do you have one quick question? And can the answer be we'll talk about this in a future episode?
Possibly.
I have a feeling that this one might end up being something which we'll elaborate on. But for the sake, we've obviously talked about Gygaxian and effectively a lock between. It could be planes, it could be just for the sake of power, it could be a few other little bits and pieces. It does open up a question as well. Is this world linked through to other planes? And if they are, how is it linked? Is it linked by location? Is it linked by magic portals being opened? It's even, to a degree, how gods can commune with us and create these links of power themselves.
Yes, it is linked. Because I think D&D very heavily relies on planar things existing.
I certainly agree with it having to be existing. It's more,
And it is part of the multiversal thing in the.
yeah. It's more how they're linked, and is it by effectively bridges or portals which are permanently open or can be opened and closed, or a few different variations on exactly how that one can sort of be placed.
I personally don't think that there are any that are permanently open on Tamrinor leading elsewhere. There might be some permanent ones that go from the other planes back to this one. I mean, one thing obviously we might need to elaborate on in the future is the planar structure of what is around Tamrinor. I think the ethereal plane is fairly much a guaranteed thing. Like it,
Pretty much.
that sort of has to be there for certain spells like etherealness to work.
Yes.
Um,
And effectively blink animals of any kind and all that sort of
yeah.
things.
So I think there's definitely an ethereal plane, and you access that via the spells we just mentioned and or the abilities of those animals that are able to blink into it or out of it. I personally think that there is a sort of an argument to be made for a Fey and Shadow realm. Sort of the bright and happy Fey twisted version of Tamrinor, and the dark, grim, shadow infused version of Tamrinor. And not
that was one of the other things I was thinking about. It's something which we'll probably get into later on, but how are the other planes presented? Are they completely different, or are they like alternate versions of Tamrinor?
I think with the two that I mentioned, the sort of the closest ones to Tamrinor is, while they might not be geographical mirrors of the existence, they are emotional mirrors, potentially. So it's like the realm of the Fae. Like, again, we don't call it the Shadowfell and the Feywild because those are D&D specific names. But the Fey realm and the Shadowfell, damn it, I just called it the thing. The Fey realm and the Shadow realm, the realm of shadows, the dark place, the deep dark, the
upside down, damn it.
The non-copyrighted name,
They're not here.
The over there, the other place, that one.
Adventure Time.
The Grim.
No, that one's been taken as well.
The Grim, whatever we call it, but like,
we can come up with names a bit later, but yeah.
The Dank Place, suggests Tanny.
How dank would you say it is?
Like a 7.
That doesn't sound like dank to me.
Out of like 10, so you know.
I was thinking, I was thinking it'd be a bit. I was thinking it'd be like a 9 or 10 in terms of dankness.
Well, it depends where in the dank place you are, really. Like,
I suppose, yeah.
As an average, it's 7, but some places are like definitely like a 12.
Oh, right, yeah. That's
but they are like, they aren't like, you can't go there and be like, this is, my house is here. Like, it's not that close of a mirror, but like, you might be able to go there and be like, this is the Shadow Vectis Haven. I didn't think it could get worse, but it has.
I was going to say, it's exactly the same.
I'm just having flashbacks to that Red Dwarf episode where they split in two. Like, one ship's got all the good aspects, and one ship's got all the bad aspects of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be fair, that's not a bad way of effectively seeing it all. Oh god, that's the good place, the bad place, and the medium place.
And we're in the medium.
I believe they've done a show about that.
Can't use that either, no.
The Garden of Starless Skies. Is that from a thing, Tanny, or is that from your brain?
Oh, that is a good name.
Because if that's from a thing, that's a good name and somebody's already used it. But if it's from your brain, that's a good thing and I'm stealing it.
Think it from your brain.
Charge him, Tanny. Charge him.
Tanny's brain's stolen. Starless Skies. Shadow Realm? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Yeah. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. It works perfectly.
Love the thought process. Very well done. For other people not reading the chat, they were thinking of the Black Garden in Destiny, and then was like, the thing,
Garden.
The Garden of Starless Skies. I don't think there are permanent places that you can go to that are just like, here is the portal and it is open. And we will go to the Garden of Starless Skies or the Feywild. I think there are places you can go to where the skein between realities is thin and you can push through it if you know the correct incantations and the correct way to open the door. And if the panic moon is rising, the tear in reality, like a tear in reality, might occur there.
Stars are right.
If the stars are right in the night sky, walkers along this pathway disappear, never to return for 100 years. If the stars are right, they go to the Garden of Starless Skies, which is a bad thing if the stars are right, because you can't get back, because the stars aren't there.
Whoops.
Whoopsie doodles. I think there are possibly crossing points from those places back to set places in this reality. And I think one of the ones in the Garden of Starless Skies should be Vectis Haven, has a shadow crossing.
Makes sense.
Oh, Tanny, you spoil me.
Oh no.
Is the stars appear in the realm, it means a bad event, but the stars are actually eyes.
That is good, actually.
Um,
Oh God, can you imagine that realm is actually living?
yes.
It's a living realm of sorts, and effectively it can mold itself however it likes and tends to stay in that one place until it is awoken. In which case, you better get out quick.
But yeah, I think that's the thing. What do other people feel about other realms?
I believe when it comes down to this is something we probably, I'm going to say, is going to come down a bit more once we learn a bit more on what kind of pantheon we create. Because it's going to have such a connecting point there with the different gods and such forth. They probably have different realms which are created and such forth.
Do you love the idea that the realms are like a reflection of the main realm, of the primary realm?
I think we have mentioned actually that we have talked about there being heavens and hells, upper and lower planes equal to the 7 deadly sins and the 7 heavenly virtues.
Dante's Inferno, isn't it?
At that, but then again, it's also a medium which has gone into so many different areas that it could be argued it's everywhere. But it is originally the Inferno.
I mean,
apart from the virtues, I don't think
the original Dante's Inferno didn't have anything to do with the sins. It was just the 9 circles of hell, which
were based off of the sins, if I remember correctly. When it came out to this is the designated place for the sin of pride. This was the designated place.
I don't believe so. I think that was all through the video game.
There was.
I am trying to think back to actually going because I've read the cantos.
It was they are tied to particular vices or particular sins, aren't they? Yeah.
They're not necessarily the 7 deadly sins.
No, it's literally one of those. It's not that the place is made for the sin. That's pretty much what the video game has sort of taken and twisted around. But these were the designated places for this sin, that sin, this one here and that one there, so that their torment could be focused.
Law said, I thought you said Sims, not sins for a second there, and I was very confused. So yeah, that's
the next game we're coming up with.
That's the area where they tortured the Sims with, all the doors have disappeared from your house, and that's the eternal swimming pool where you've dived in, but the
no ladder.
The ladder's gone away.
That one is in Dante's Inferno. That one is there. That's for the traitors.
Ooh.
forest. Does sound familiar for some reason.
The slumbering twilight, eh?
I've noted the slumbering twilight for the Fey realm.
I like that.
Here's a shed of social workers, says Law.
Yeah.
I assume that's not another realm. That's more Sims.
I like the slumbering twilight. It comes over with a nice little thing, almost like Midsummer's Night Dream.
Yeah.
It just feels right for the Fae.
I think this is a good place to stop.
I'll agree with you there.
I think this is a good set of notes that we have. I think this is a good set of notes we have, and once I can remember how to get a new thing started in Obsidian, I think Obsidian is going to be the way forward with these notes. And I'll move the notes from Notion into Obsidian and have Obsidian be the central
Note grabber.
Note place. And I'll move the notes of the races over as well, and the other bits. I will accumulate all of the things here, is what I'm saying, between this session and the next one. That is my homework. I'm going to make all of the notes into Obsidian notes.
Very nice.
So that'll be fun for me. That's not sarcastic. It will be fun for me. I just need to remember how to use Obsidian. I might need to talk to Michael about that. What do we think for next time? Also, I think, if I'm remembering it correctly, we've needed to reschedule next time.
This time next month will be MCM.
Yes, because of that reason. I believe...
I think it's a good reason.
I believe, if I am not incorrect, that I have scheduled our next council session for the 2nd of June, which would be a week on from when it should be, which would be the 26th, which will be the end of Friday of MCM.
Righty-ho.
What do we want to talk about at that point? Do we want to
Interior
ask...
decorating.
Do we want to have that chat?
I think that would be a good one.
Well, given that is actually the first question asked this evening.
Yes.
Probably yes.
So...
Oh yeah, that was a point where Lady Law, you weren't around for the very first question, which was the question you asked me to ask.
which was answered as, shut up, we'll talk about it later.
Yeah, pretty much. The whole point on the architecture and architectural designs and such of different races and how to come together, in particular the central one, where obviously it's meant to be a union and alliance. So have they come together to build, or are they just multiple different variations? But once again, we'll come to that. Probably next time would make a lot of sense.
I think next time, if we can get Shan, we will do that, and if we can't, we'll work something else out.
Okay, how about if we can't, we have a look at our version of the Pantheon.
That's
like
probably
that
probably a very good idea.
But the thing, it's not a bad backup, and it's something which we've been touching upon tonight as well.
I think those are 2 points that we are going to struggle against if we don't answer them soon. So I think either next session will be architecture and the session after it will be Pantheon, or next session will be Pantheon and the one after it will be architecture. Probably.
That sounds like a good plan for me.
As I say, I'm going to transfer a load of notes into this from other places and link them all up, because this is going to be fun. I'm also going to say things that we end the stream with, such as, thank you guys in the chat so much for watching. If you haven't done so already, please do hit that follow button. It's a great way for you guys to know when we go live, a completely free way that you can support us on the channel. We are still aiming to get to 350 followers by the time we go to MCM at the end of the end of May, which is very soon, and by that I mean Monday is May. Monday is May. That's insane.
It is.
Mayday just around the corner.
Mayday, Mayday. Fifth Wednesday after
Mayday,
Pentecost.
Mother's Day, Tuesday.
Yes, brain. Think of things that I say at this point. We are less than 10 people away from having our follower goal. So if you know anyone who isn't following us, do try to encourage them that we are nice people.
That's right. Lie to them.
If you are in London at the end of May, we are going to be. Several of us are going to be, and we're going to have posters and books that Jeff has recently posted the new book to me. We're going to have posters and books and giveaways and a special Beat the Boss challenge where you will be able to take on the final boss and hopefully together take down the final boss before the end of the weekend. Otherwise, I get to keep the prize, I guess.
Yay.
Be right. You'll have to beat him to make sure that doesn't happen.
But this time we will also have prizes along the way for people that just take part, which is nice, and because we planned it slightly further than the Saturday of the convention.
Yeah. Oh, that was still brilliant. Just to say, yeah, we should have done that. Let's do it. Okay.
But yes, we'll see you at MCM if you are going. Otherwise, we have a YouTube channel where you can go and find all of our replays. And Jeff is also doing a Let's Play on there at the moment. Jeff,
I am, yes.
Jeff is playing Sherlock Holmes The Awakened.
The new release version, yep. Exclusive to YouTube.
Exclusive to our YouTube channel. So head on over to YouTube and ding the little bell if you want to see all of that stuff. We have a Discord as well where you can go and chat with us about the things that are going on, such as memes that have just been posted, such as "Help, I'm lost in the spoon." If you want to know what that means, go to Discord.
Only there will you find the spoon.
Our Discord is linked underneath the stream in the chat, or it's on our website, which has just had a massive redesign. If you head on over to our website, you'll see the fancy new design work that I've spent the last couple of weeks building, based on post-it notes and Polaroid pictures and push pins. It's a lot of fun, and I really enjoy it. It's a very retro new look.
I must have. You say that, and first of all, what comes into my head is the burrowers making a home.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. We are now going to go to the credit screen, and I hope to God it works. Untested, here we go.
Oh God, it's on fire!
Sort of. Looks like there needs to be some styling done, but yeah. Here are the streams we've got coming up for the next couple of days. On Sunday, I'll be back with Rime of the Frost Maiden as the group continue to deal with the Verbeegs. At Carrion's request, they are dealing with the Verbeeg who has come in with a basket of mysterious metals that they are going to hopefully apprehend. On Monday, Angel is going to yell at monsters in Genshin Impact, probably. On Tuesday, I'm going to be playing Marvel's Midnight Suns on this channel. On Wednesday, I don't know what we're playing next Wednesday because we've not decided yet. But Ben, you're playing Take to the Sky.
We will be, yeah. Take to the Sky and Children of the Light.
And then on Thursday next week, Genshin Impact again with Angel. Friday next week is an early Friday in the month.
It's booked for you.
So, I bet Jeff. Do we have a Friday stream
know.
next week?
I don't know yet. So I don't know if I'll be around for that yet.
Watch this space, or a space similar to it. With that though,
Aren't we having that meeting?
oh yes, that is a good point. We won't have a stream next Friday because MCM meeting is occurring,
Exactly.
which won't be streamed because you don't want to see
don't
that.
want to give everything away.
So yeah, there won't be a
We're gonna
stream.
take over the shop. We're going to take over the entire floor to do our live D&D there.
What we will have is next Saturday, Sunday, Monday is a massive amount of D&D. I'm going to start advertising this now because next Saturday we are doing the Tyranny of the Dragon. Tyranny of Dragons. Need to remember how to pronounce that name. Tyranny of Dragons. On Sunday, it is going to be Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage. On Monday, we're going to do Furious Road in the afternoon. We're going to have afternoon D&D stream, where we will have special guests from Roll the Damn Dice joining us for D&D. And then Monday evening next week is the first episode of The Light of Xarixis, a new Spelljammer adventure with our Spelljammer team.
Never heard of them.
So that's as much D&D as I can fit into a weekend without, with still allowing time for sleeping and eating. So all I have to do...
You really need to do that part, John.
All I have to do is get rid of those pesky activities and I can do the whole weekend of D&D.
Yay!
But for now, we're going to do a raid. We're going to see who's live to raid. Possibly if there it is. We are going to raid Starship Trooper, who is playing the 11th Soul, a horror game. So if you don't like horror games,
111th Soul.
raid in and dive out of the way. But go give Star some love. They got a new job.
Oh yeah.
Which is very good after losing their last one very unexpectedly and quickly. So yeah, go and celebrate with Star. We'll see you guys again real soon. For now, so long. Bye guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.